Well, today I have a Spyderco pocket knife design that I've never tested and reviewed here on the channel, but has been around forever. Today we're looking at the Spyderco Sage5 Lightweight, and we're gonna put it up head to head against the Para3 Lightweight and see how this newest version of the Sage5 compares to the competition. Well, that's right, folks. Welcome back to another video here at Gideon's Tactical. Thanks for joining me today. And if you guys like the content, I invite you to subscribe, become part of the GT family. We're throwing up videos every single week, giving you guys in-depth, comprehensive reviews so that you guys can make wise choices on your gear and giving you tips on just how to better utilize your gear when you're out there in the world enjoying life. So today, as I said, we're looking at the newly released Sage5 Lightweight. Now, the Sage design has been around for a long time for many different reasons. I just haven't ever gotten around to picking one up. Some of it is the different locking mechanisms that they've used in the past. This one now being with a compression lock. I believe they may have had one other design in the past that had a compression lock, but the lightweight feature and the type of pocket clip they're going with, all these things connected with me so much that I said, now I need to pick this guy up. And so I have had a chance to play with it, EDC it on a regular basis. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and look at the blades here. Now, there's definitely some differences in thickness and shape and materials. Now, the Sage5 Lightweight is going to have CPM S30V steel. It is made in Taiwan. The knife itself, I believe that steel, because it is CPM, has to come from America because of the crucible, I believe, steel that is being done and then obviously put together in Taiwan. The Para3 is made here in the USA with CTS BD1N steel. Now, S30V steel that I've seen on Spyderco over the years, very rust resistant, holds an edge well. It is a little bit harder to resharpen than other S30Vs that I have experienced when it does dull. On the flip side, the CTS BD1N steel is an upgrade over BD1. And from edge testing that I have seen from my buddy Cedric over on YouTube, he does a lot of like rope cutting and cordage testings, and I really trust his procedures. He has discovered that CTS BD1N is it's better than VG10 on edge retention that Spyderco uses, but not quite up to their S30V. Steel. So it's close to S30V, better than the VG10, and kind of a blending of the two, if you will, and it is a little bit easier to resharpen from what I have experienced. So data for you to just kind of consider and chew on and think of. Now, between the two blades, we are looking at 3 inches on both from handle to tip. Now, both will have about 2.64 actual cutting edge, full flat grind for both. The differences are obviously blade shape, but also thickness levels. The Para is going to be thicker back at the spine here by the jimping at 0.14, whereas the Sage is going to be 0.12. So the Para is a little stouter, but the Sage is a little bit thinner. And so what that means is you're actually going to get a little bit better slicing capability, not by much. Very few of you will actually probably notice it, but I have seen just slightly better slicing out of the Sage because of the thickness than on the Para. So that is something just to consider when you are looking at these blades. They're both full flat grind. I mean, the Sage is going to do an amazing job cutting, slicing, doing all the stuff that you would want. The Para is extremely, extremely close second. And both, compared to most other blades on the market, are just wicked, wicked slicers. The tips are very similar. They're going to have both kind of a leaf shape, but obviously the Sage having more of a leaf shape design, and the Para having a slightly more piercing shape, taking it from its big brother, the Paramilitary 2. And so a lot of it will depend for you on blade shape. What do you connect with more viewpoint wise? And do you want something a little bit thicker, stouter? Do you want something that's a slightly slimmer overall? Now, the positive thing as well, now there is a control factor to this as well. Now, because of how high this Para design is, the thumb ramp is extremely high. So when you use it, you're very locked into place, which is very nice, and you're not going anywhere. But if you wanted to kind of get up over the blade and get even more precision or control, it's not bad. It's just a little unusual and a little awkward. Whereas on the Sage, because there isn't quite as much as an aggressive thumb ramp. You feel a little bit more natural. It doesn't feel quite as like in control here, but you're able to easily get right over that Spyderco logo and really get some very fine, good control over the blade, and it's more natural. So it's not a drawback, it's just something that I kind of noticed with the two designs. Some of it is purely aesthetic, what connects with you on an aesthetic level. Some of it is a level of control and sliciness, depending on the design that you decide to go with. So the pocket clips will be the same. Loop over pocket clips. I love these paper clip style. They are slim, they disappear in your pocket, they're not obnoxious. It is ambidextrous on either side. You can unscrew them and swap them over, so totally for righties or lefties. It is literally my favorite lightweight pocket clip design. I love it. So tip up only, and again, just a really good loop over there. A little bit different, just so you can see there. The Para has an actual like loop. Just notice this as we're here doing this on screen. And whereas the Sage has a more angled. I haven't noticed that that's a positive one way or the other. They are standing off from the body exactly the same, so they're not going to cause any more hot spot than the other. One's just looped, and one I guess is just kind of straight off. So something to consider there. They are actually not identical, though they are very similar. Now the handles, being that lightweight polymer handle scales, though they look similar, will have minor differences that I think will determine which one you go with. I think a lot of it is going to be based off of the handle itself, which will be better suited for you. Now they both have that lightweight polymer that Spyderco is known for that they do. Now the Para3 is going to have more of their cubed texturing throughout, whereas the Sage has more of an almost like an octagon look that goes one direction, for half of the handle, and then another direction. They look different. I don't know how well it's showing up on screen. Hopefully that's a little bit better. You see it kind of going in one direction till the logo, and then it splits for the second half. It's not a positive or a negative on the traction level. I haven't noticed it one way or the other. It's a good grip for both blades, but they are different patterns, and the Para3 having more of a Spyderco Delica or Endura cube. They have a particular word for it, cubing. This one has an octagon. The Sage has an octagon look to it. Now another aspect as well is that the length from the cut-in for the choil on the Sage to the back end is actually longer than the cut-in on the Para to where the hump ends, and then the blade, and then the handle begins to contour up. So what that means is, with my large size hands, I wear large size gloves, when I'm not using the choil, my finger goes right here. All my fingers grab on, but you can see there that my pinky is kind of half on the back end there. Now it's not a sharp abrupt because of how nice and rounded that is, but it feels like my pinky is almost wanting to come off, and then it forces me to really want to get into the choil. Now I've known that with the Para, that's not necessarily an issue, but when you go to the Sage, because it's slightly longer, you can see here my pinky is not completely wanting to come off, and it kind of contours and cups my pinky a little bit better. So if I'm not engaging the choil, I feel like I have a slight more real estate on the Sage than I do on the Para. And then obviously if I choke up to the choil, no issue whatsoever there. So there is just a hair longer handle dimension on the Sage from guard to end than there is from guard to transition of the Para, even though the handle scales themselves are about the same length. Now another difference that you'll see is the Sage has kind of squared off transitions almost everywhere except for right here on the cut-in, whereas on the Para everything is rounded. I like that aspect of the Para, that the transitions have a little less of abrupt angles, whereas the Sage has more of an abrupt angle. The Sage reminds me a lot more of my Manix 2 lightweights, so if you own one of those already, or have ever handled a Manix 2 lightweight, or vice versa, maybe you own a Sage lightweight and you're looking at the Manix, they're the same. So they don't cause necessarily uncomfortability, but there's just more comfortability with the Para because of the rounded transitions everywhere on the handle scales, where you only get that in a certain point on the Sage. Now there is another big difference between the Para lightweight and the Sage lightweight. The Para does not have any liners at all, so it's only relying on the polymer to give it any rigidness and structure. That is not the case on the Sage. The Sage, though it does have those lightweight scales, you can see in there has steel liners that have been machined and milled out. So the Sage is going to be heavier by a little bit over the Para, and it will have a little bit more structure, a little bit more strength to it, and rigidness in the handle. So you are sacrificing a little bit in weight, but you are gaining rigidness in the Sage over the Para. For some of you, you won't mind that at all. You don't mind like having ultralight and the lack of a liner does not bother you. For some of you, you will absolutely gravitate more to the Sage because of the liner in there. You can see the standoffs are steel versus the Para that are just polymer and the screws go through there. So there is definitely a distinction there that some of you will gravitate to depending on who you are. For me, these are both light duty folders. It doesn't really matter to me. Now when it comes to lockup and deployment, we got that awesome thumb hole on both of these guys. They're both gonna be riding on bronze bushings that just fly open. Love it. Really, really smooth deployment. No issues whatsoever on either of these blades. And they're both going to run with those compression locks. I really like the compression lock. I've never had any issues with it. It works very well. And the nice thing is on both of these, you have a little bit of wobble side to side, none up and down. A little bit side to side, none up and down. And because of the way the compression lock is designed, it just drops that blade in there real nicely. Real nice and smooth. So the lockup and deployment is everything you'd expect from Spyderco with their thumb hole, the compression lock, and the bronze bushings. Now we're going to hit price. The Spyderco Sage5 lightweight is going to be more expensive by about 20 bucks. It comes in at around $120 to $125. And the Para3 is going to come in at about $98 to $100. So about $20 to $25 cheaper for the Para3. Now, I will argue that because the Para3 lightweight is made in America and the Sage5 lightweight is made in Taiwan, because of labor costs and things like that, even though the fit and finish and quality control is phenomenal out of Taiwan's factories for Spyderco, I would argue these should be the same price, honestly. These should be about $100 each, and I understand why they are charging the extra 20 bucks because of the upgraded steel and liners and a couple little things in there, but I will say because it's made overseas, it should just be the same price as the US manufactured Para. That would make more sense to me if they made it in the factory, if they were the Taiwanese factory. If they made the Sage5 here in America with these exact same materials, I could understand the $125 absolutely. It's not a deal breaker. It's just something to consider, just to be aware of as you are considering between the Para3 or the Sage5 or some other blade altogether, what you're paying for, what you're getting, and the manufacturing that goes into these designs. Well, there you have it, guys. I hope this video has been fun, entertaining, answered the questions that you may have had about the Sage5 lightweight and whether or not it's the right pocket knife for you. And if I missed anything, feel free to leave comments below that you have questions about, either myself or one of the other viewers. I'm sure won't be able to answer those questions for you guys. But this blade definitely connects with me. It's definitely a top tier Spyderco for me now, just because of all the things that we've gone through today, and will be in regular rotation for my EDC collection, absolutely. So I'm glad that Spyderco produced this design and definitely connects with me, but I want to hear from you if it doesn't connect with you, or do some of the other blades we looked at today just seem like either better values or better designing for you. I always love to hear that back and forth conversation here at the channel. I invite you to check out that other video popping up. Subscribe if you're not a current subscriber. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook as well. You can see behind the scenes stuff, up and coming stuff, and it's just a different, better way to interact with me sometimes, particularly if you want to like swap links and ask different types of questions to follow along on our social media pages as well. Finally, guys, always remember, stay equipped, stay prepared, and we'll see you out there.